the monitor engineer, the wind talkers of the audio world. They go to boot camp. They wind up working in some of the hardest conditions that exist in the live touring world. There's no mixing by committee. There's no opinion that matters other than the artist on the other side of the console. You get it right, you get to keep your job for maybe another day. Welcome, everybody. This is the Live from Nowhere broadcast to benefit all the out-of-work crew members. I'm in the crew room today with some of the best monitor engineers working in the business. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. And after I introduce you, why don't you give us a little bit about yourselves and the acts you've worked for and how we wound up here today. Matt, you want to start us off, please?
Sure. I started working for some local regional companies in Kansas City 20 some odd years ago. Worked up the way and now tour with mainly Peter Frampton, the B-52s, other various artists. Just enjoy working on the side of the stage with the bands because I used to be a drummer way back in the day too. So I know that feeling, what it's like to be on the stage.
Monty, you want to give us a little bit?
Yeah, so I started out epoxying S4s back in the 80s for audio analysts when they were putting together a system for Monsters of Rock. And kind of never found myself getting a real job after all those stories from the road guys. Worked with Springsteen, Shania Twain, Sammy Hagar. Matt and I and Brad jump in and out on Ringo occasionally. So, 30 years brings a lot of different names on that list.
Brad, you want to give us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. Kind of similar to Matt, worked with some sound companies, did some club work, went to school for music and recording, musician as well. Ended up working up north, and I lived near Chicago, up that way, and started working at various places in the sound company, did some TV work, ended up doing Weird Al for a little while. Then went from that, was a tech on DMB for a couple years, and met the Lumineers there, and I've been with those guys ever since. That was 2013, but I've also did a stint with Steely Dan, as Monty said, Ringo. I filled in for him and Matt, and then been doing Sammy Hagar a lot lately, did some Taj Mo stuff. Yeah, man, it's been great. It's been fun.
Excellent. Ricky, a little bit about yourself, please.
Yeah. So I started off actually as like a club guy. But before that, I was training to become a recording engineer. So while I was training as a club guy, I actually got a job eventually at Interscope Records, being like their in-house engineer, like runner, you name it, all that position. But they had a club room as well, so I did a lot of showcases. So eventually transitioning to that, then going into clubs in LA, then started touring as a merch guy, and then eventually started picking up gigs, working for bands with artists as Ben Harper, Young the Giant, and currently with the Eagles now.
Wow. It's an interesting career path, to say the least.
Yeah, definitely.
Jonathan, you want to give us a little bit about your background as well, please?
Sure. I similarly went to a recording school, dropped out of college my second year, went to a recording school with a friend of mine, and stumbled into it. Dirk Schubert at Schubert Systems hired me, and I had little, if any, knowledge of what I was doing at all. And spent the first 4 or 5 years with him, just really learning all the basics of being a shop guy and a tech. And I'm kind of the weirdo in the bunch. I started out on the other end of the snake. I was out front for about 20 years and got my first break mixing Toto. I also worked with Sammy for about 6 years and did acts like Oingo Boingo and Pat Benatar and a bunch of others. And about 12 years ago, ended up hanging PA for Shadone with Sound Image and monitor teching on John Legend, and took over the seat a year later. And I've been with John exclusively for the last 11 years doing monitors.
That is quite, again, a very diverse set of career paths here that all wound up basically in the one chair where you're not allowed to be that guy. I do feel for you, if that's a way to put it. I spent a long time in that position on tour. I know that a lot of times it's thankless. Some of the clients you wind up with are less than helpful, but you all have managed to survive quite a while doing maybe the job nobody else really wants, and you should be congratulated for it. Okay, so now we're going to play a game called Mic This. I'm going to give you a non-traditional instrument, and each of you is going to give me a mic solution. Today's non-traditional instrument is an ATV exhaust. How are you going to mic it up? John, why don't we start with you?
An ATV exhaust. I would take an old Sennheiser 431, no high pass filter, and get it, well, as deep inside that exhaust pipe as I could.
All right. Monty?
I'd say an SM57 or a little clip-on 98 if you had to do it wirelessly. Throw that on an RF back.
Matt?
The cheapest, dirtiest thing you got to shove up in there. Just get the growl and go.
Brad?
I'm going to say some sort of Omni Lav. Just, DPA or something like that right by it.
And Ricky?
I'll go with the D6. Let's try that.
D6. All right. There's nothing crazy. The Sennheiser's that's pretty extravagant there. I like that. So following this off, over the course of your careers and mine, we've all been asked to do weird things with microphones, mic a very unique sound source. What's the strangest thing you've ever been asked to mic, and how did you deal with it? And John, why don't you start us off?
When I was mixing Van Halen in '91 out front, Alex, Jim Yakubuski was monitor engineer at the time. Got to give him a shout out. And Al was looking for a sound, and he wanted us to mic the air hole on the side of the snare. We tried it, didn't accomplish anything, but that's got to be the weirdest thing I was asked to mic.
Okay. Monty?
So on a Springsteen rehearsal period, Clarence was learning how to play the bagpipes. And Bruce had this great idea that he wanted to start the show with Clarence playing bagpipes. Band comes up on stage in the dark. We had 4 techs that had to go out with SM37, I know, a large diaphragm Shores, try and get him around Clarence. The mid-60s guy is hobbling up the stairs in the dark, open mics on the stage. So clunk, clunk, clunk. After that, Bruce was like, no, we're not going to do it again. Pipes in the Dark was a pretty good one.
Who have I missed? Ricky?
So when I was at Interscope, we did a showcase for this act that just signed on called Street Jump Corps. And they had anything you could think of when it comes to like industrial steel, like, keg barrel drums, grinders, that theatrical deal. So it was that was kind of rough because we had like really expensive mics. So I remember I had an old 414, at least to kind of capture the overheads of what's going on. And I remember the grinder was like sparking so much that it would like spark right into the microphone. So that was a fun one. And that was a small room, like maybe like 250, 300 cap.
Brad, what have you got in the arsenal here?
At one point, one of my guys in the Lumineers likes to go find random things and dumpsters that are instruments and mic them up and just bring it on stage. So we had a toy piano that was like yay big. It had like 12 keys, and then it had to be wireless. So I ended up putting a KM137 like on an LP claw with a packed Velcro inside it. That was probably the weirdest thing from those guys I've had to do.
Matt, what wonderful thing have you had to deal with?
I don't know if I would take credit for it, but I spent a lot of years with the Blue Man Group on their touring crew, and it was exciting, micing all the tubes and pipes, and so I wasn't necessarily the sound designer for it, but just being able to recreate all those sounds was really exciting. I mean, there's some really unique tones that come out of PVC pipe that you would never imagine. That it's all natural, and it really is pretty amazing.
But when you were talking about the PVC, they note them as instruments. Yeah. They
yes.
Like
definitely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, very cool. That's a lot to deal with over a little while. We've all seen some stuff change over the years as well. Let's shift the topic a little bit more over to the gear. We're not all, I don't know anybody's age here, and I'm not going to laugh about how old I am, but at some point I had to switch from analog gear over to digital, same as everybody on the planet. What changed? Did anything change, if at all? And have you had to change your approach? What are your ups and downs with it? And Monty, why don't we start with you?
Sometimes I find with digital in the options, I can dig in a little too deep instead of keeping things a little more on the simple side like analog would tend to be. Just because I can put a gate and a compressor and any sort of wave things on an input doesn't mean I really should. So I find every once in a while I just need to take a step back from the digital availability of everything and just go like old school analog. I'm just going to keep my signal path simple and not try and overcomplicate things just because the technology's there.
Okay. Matt, how about you?
I would agree with that exactly. It seems like we have the ability to do that. Everybody wants this, this, and this, and this. And you kind of got to narrow things down a little bit and go back to basics. Being the fact that we can is great and we have those options. I use that more for like controllability and mainly mute groups and just cleaning up the sounds, not necessarily coloring the sounds as much. But I don't know, as monitor guys, we're just glorified matrix mixers, trying to give everybody what they want. And so we're able to clean things up a little bit more with the availability and the processing we have at our fingertips. It's kind of what I go for.
Okay. Ricky, how about yourself?
I'm not sure what more I could add to that, but that's pretty much the same with Matt, what he was saying. Just having that the availability with the digital realm to be able to route, like that's probably the best thing about digital is being able to route things to wherever you need to go. As far as like keeping things simple, like I agree with that. Keeping that input channel like that, that signal path. Just as simple as possible and just trust your ears to what the artist is looking for, and just have like a game plan on what you're looking to do. And if it's necessary, then yeah, like we can add into like external servers or plugins, whatever you need. But all in all, like all these boards that are out there now, they're well equipped to be able to do exactly what you need to do without having to introduce too much.
Okay. John, how about yourself?
I came from that school of when you're mixing monitors, you want to get what the artist needs almost before they ask for it. Anticipate they need a little more vocal, a little more guitar, what have you. And on the analog consoles, I fell into that bad habit of over EQing quite often. I found the opposite. When I got on a digital console, when I could see what I was doing and I couldn't react, I had to really think my way through the steps I was making moves on. I started to slow down a lot when I was mixing. So I was paying attention a bit more. My bandwidths are a lot tighter. So I wasn't digging myself into as deep a holes as often. So I approach the desk now, I think, in a way where I can react quickly. But when it comes to putting, having limiters on the back end or having set, I'm on the S6L a lot. So I've got the 7-band parametrics on the back end to really focus on not over EQing stuff and losing the whole feel of it. So it's been an interesting balance of slowing down, mixing and focusing on what I'm doing, but be able to have the board laid out where I can react quickly still, and get whichever artist or musician on stage needs what they want right away.
Excellent. Brad, how about you?
I think it's really a mixture of what everybody said. I mean, again, as Monty said, you have the ability to do everything that you want. And I remember I fell into that trap kind of when I first started hopping on the bigger digital consoles, putting gates and comps and everything because you could just to clean it up. And in the end, it just kind of screwed me, and then as J.O. said, being able to lay things out the way you want, and Matt said the same thing. I have it set up so every layer I'm on a Digico almost all the time anymore. I can always have what I need on my right side, no matter what. It never leaves there, no matter where I'm at. The last four faders are pretty much always the same. It's quick. It's easy to get to it. It's simple. The other thing I was going to mention is, I think that a lot of people, nobody here, honestly, but I think there's other people out there that we've all seen will rely more on the console because of what it can do now with wave servers and all those kind of things, plugins and such, that they don't always think about what the actual source sounds like anymore. Oftentimes like put a mic up and just go with it. it's unfortunate because I don't think we see that as often. Like I said, guys like us, I think, and I hope I'm involved. I hope I'm included in that. We'll listen to a source first and then make choices, as opposed to just throwing a mic up and dealing with it. You know what I mean? I think that's the big thing, is you can do a lot with plugins now, but just because you have them and you can doesn't mean you need to. And I think a lot of people run into that where they just do it because they can. And it ultimately makes things harder, I think, in the long run.
That is, that's quite a bit of information. That's very, I think you're well explained amongst five guys here. I understand the other changes that have happened at the same time. The digital desk kind of showed up. We used to mix on really loud boxes on stage, wedges, side fills, and everybody who's ever been involved in the rock band knows the God of Thunder drum fill behind. How has that transition to ears, to radio systems, changed your outlook as far as, again, workflow, gear choices, mic choices? Monty, let's start with you.
It adds another layer of work trying to coordinate RF for me. I usually handle that task myself, because if the artist has something go down, they're going to look to me, not to the guy sitting behind me that might have his computer out doing something else. So the RF coordination always has been something I've kind of had taken upon myself to work with, just for my comfort factor. A lot of older artists, though, aren't going to ears because they're used to having the wedges out there. So with Bruce, we've got a combination of guys on ears, guys on wedges, and trying to find that happy median between the two working so you don't overpower one with the other, guys in proximity to one another. Some guys, the ears are more convenient or more of a critical thing than the wedge, because they want to block out what's going on stage. When I do Ozzy, bass player doesn't want to hear any of the vocals, so he got ears specifically just to block everything out and just hear his bass and the drums. So, it's one of those things. It's so band and artist dependent who wants to do what, or which path they want to take. Some do both, and it works out okay, I think, for me.
Excellent. John?
I was never good with wedges, speakers, side fills. And I always admired guys. I mean, Monty and I, when we did Hagar, I knew that what he was creating on deck gave the band the feel. And without that, then, out front, you don't have a lot to work with. So I was always tentative of it. But when I took over for Legend, the whole band's on ears. I've got 10 musicians and John. Not a speaker up there. I mean, I've added subs for side fills, and I use thumpers for the guys, but I'm lucky with them because they really want a full mix. My front of house experience has been helpful in that area. And so I kind of flourish with that. I like panning stuff and moving stuff and creating, different verbs for horn players or the singers or what have you. With the RF world, I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to that. So I've always relied on my tech. I've always given them free rein to change packs out during the show or change frequencies on what have you. And I've always let the band know that he's involved in that. I'm lucky in my situation because, John rarely looks at me or asks for anything. And the band is real comfortable with us head manning the stage and taking care of things. So for me, I've been successful just because ears is, nothing's going to feed back. So I'm pretty safe up there. But I have found true. But I have found with thumpers that it's added this bottom end dimension that once you're used to that, taking those away is really, it sucks, So I love adding that element of everything below 80 hertz for them to feel it up on deck. So,
okay. Brad.
Yeah, it's just to reiterate, I mean, the RF thing, I do a lot. We've got about 60 to 70 channels that I do every day on Lumineers, which is a lot.
Wow.
And just with Monty, I'm the same way. I want them to look at me, and I don't want to look at my tech and be like, what's your problem? I want to know it's me who's the problem. But I also do a lot of RF in corporate environments too. I've done, a couple hundred frequencies. So I'm used to it and I don't mind doing it. Another thing that kind of J.O. mentioned was having being with the front of house guy. I think that's really huge for both sides of it as doing wedges and ears. You know, Jo and I work with a same front of house guy for Josh Osmond, who's great. Hey, Josh, if you listen. And it makes a big difference on stage if the front of house mix is really good. You know, if it's not, it makes it really, really hard, especially doing wedges. At least with ears, you're kind of covering it up a little bit. But with wedges, man, if that mix is bad out front, it makes life on deck so much harder. At least that was my experience with it when I was dealing with it.
Yeah. Does your artist hang out in front of the PA, behind it?
My guys, they would, everywhere. We had this big thrust the last time that went out. They were all in front of it sometimes. One was in front of it, and it made it fun for all of us. Very fun.
Yeah, it's an ask. It's become more prevalent nowadays. Yep. I didn't think about that part of it. Matt.
I can agree with, everybody so far, but Brad especially. Being on stage, it's amazing the difference of changing out in front of house engineer, what life is on stage, and the difference it really is. It's not just like the speakers coming out front. So again, for me, I'm trying to create the artist an environment to where they're as comfortable as possible. And so, you know, we're wearing all these ear monitors, making earplugs in your ears, essentially. Therefore, creating them an environment where they're just comfortable. So for me, it's miking the audience and panning musicians left, right, so where they know they're sitting and feeling on stage. But I think the audience feels a big benefit for a band on stage. I mean, when you don't have an earpiece in, you hear the stage, you hear the audience, you hear the reflections. So if you mic the room, the audience, and give them that environment, I think that makes them a little bit more of a comfortable feel, and it makes it more natural sounding to me, I think. So I think that's an important aspect that we have to deal with in-ear monitors too.
Ricky?
Yeah, I agree with everything here. Like I've started off as working on wedges, and then worked my way up into doing in-ear monitors for several bands. There was one act where, you know, they wanted the one ear and the pair of wedges up front for him. So I agree. Like, you know, it's just creating that environment for them to feel comfortable, not to, trying to, listening to what's going on in front of house, how that translates on stage is super important. And then having getting them comfortable with what's going on in their ears. Really, that's always been my main focus whenever they go both ears and wedges. I always treat their ears, to be like the focal point for their main listening. And as far as wedge is concerned, like I've always treated it more like a feel than anything. Cause I feel like, there's probably people that tend to try to act like both wedges and ears are extremely important, like have to be like at the same SPL level. And I don't feel like that's not necessarily the case all the time, at least for the artists I've worked with. I've working with smaller acts and working my way up, like I was also coordinating with RF as well. So I always wanted to take as much responsibility as I can handle. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Excellent. That is a wonderful point about bringing the front of house guy mixer into the idea. Like it's a team sport. If the stage doesn't sound good, the artist isn't any good, it's hard for him to perform. And I'm watching literally like 5 other heads at the same time. Yeah. So I guess, everybody is on the same boat. If you don't give the guy a place to perform, it really doesn't help anybody. And I'm looking at some of the artist lists you guys have worked for. You have some wild talent in there. You tend to get unhinged. What do you do for a guy who's diving into the audience with stunning regularity, with an expensive microphone, clothes, shoes, ears, packs, and the rest of it? How do you deal with it? And how deep is your deepest guy gone? Ricky, I want to hear this one.
I think let me think. With the guys like from Young the Giant, they've been loving going. My singer's been loving going out front, with the crowd. Some of the guitar players will actually go out there while they're playing guitar and crowd surfing. I mean, at that point, I'm just like, well, they understand what's going to happen. So like they've all been pretty good about like leaving their packs, like especially towards the end of the set where like they all just want to go out there. Mainly the guitar players where like they'll leave their packs on the risers and just go out there and play along with the PA. So that I've been fortunate enough that I haven't had to like chase down, artists' packs or ears out into the crowd. Not to say that's never going to happen, but yeah, there's been that. My singer has gone out in the audience with his mic and stuff like that. And fortunate enough, there's been audience members that will, if for some reason, like if my singer drops the microphone, like they'll actually pick it up and bring it back to him. So that's
Really?
always been, yeah.
Wow.
That has happened a couple of times. So it's been great.
Well, that's excellent. Matt, how about yourself?
I don't have any exciting stories. All of my artists live on stage. I mean, Peter Frampton has a guitar cable plugged in, so he's not going too far. I mean, we use wireless ear packs to move around stage, but yeah, everybody stays on stage for me.
No.
Yeah.
Brad.
Ever since I've been with the Lumineers, when I first started with them, they had a thing where the 5 of them would go out in the audience and we just carry boxes and have handheld microphones on stands to go out.
Oh.
And then I had a kick drum that we put a wireless pack on and they'd take it out there and play out there. And then that progressed into a B stage on the next tour. And then this last tour, we had a drum kit off stage left that we on a lift that would pop up 20 feet directly in front of the PA. And we had all of them down at the center, 60 feet in front of the house. I mean, it was everywhere. And Wes, my lead guy, always goes out in the audience in the arenas and goes all the way around the circle. And then this last one, he actually would go all the way to the back of the bowl too. He's all ears, all wireless mics. So I had a pretty intense RF setup design that I kind of designed with some help from some guys. And thankfully, Sound Image bought all the gear I wanted. I was on WYSICOM ears, which made life a lot easier. And then I had Accent Digital, but I was also using not Quadversity, which of course is the sure thing if everyone's aware, but I had a separate antenna combiner distro type thing, or matrix mixer essentially. So I had 4 antennas, 2 pointed out and 2 pointed into the stage. And I mean, I had perfect coverage from the entire bowl. He never once said he couldn't hear anything. And I mean, I took a pack one time when I was doing steps in the top bowl of the arena, and I took a hit at the very back in the VOM. That was it.
Yeah, in the VOM.
Yep. But I mean, I had a heck of a system. I had a big RF over fiber thing set up that would shoot it out to the B stage. So all the normal instruments they used on stage, they would take to the B stage, and it hit all the same receivers. Everything was the same. So we weren't doubling inputs just for a 3-song bit, Yeah. It was really, really nice. It worked out great.
Okay. John?
When I started with Legend, he would start the show in the audience, and he'd come walking from the back of the hall in. And normally it was either a cappella or with a little drum groove behind him. The problem with John is he likes his voice so on top of the mix in his ears that when you've got the women screaming, to me, I don't know how a singer can deal with that, or he'll tend to go to the edge of the stage and drop that mic down. And even with audience mics, it's, the front couple rows of women screaming. To me, that seems to be kind of brutal, but he and I didn't have a lot of communication early on, or he kind of didn't voice a lot of what he was looking for. And my learning curve was when we get into the stadiums in festivals in England, and he'd see an ego ramp and he was all about it. Next thing I know, he's so far behind the beat, because the music just isn't catching up to him and he's vibing off the PA, that was those rare situations where I don't like to change the mix on him just subtly or in areas he knows it's coming from song to song. But there's been moments where I've just had to gun the entire band up on him about 6 dB because he's just, in a whole nother realm. So that delay factor, that kind of bothered me. The only other problem was the last major tour we did with so much damn video production. I was buried behind walls. I couldn't even see him except for the monitor I was watching on. So the couple times his wireless mic went flying, I didn't even see it, until you hear the thud on the stage, and you can't get through the walls to hand him the spare, and forget looking for the main because it's probably under a riser or something. You'll figure it out during loadout. So, but real major catastrophes, no. I did flash on the old days when I was a kid and I'd go see Hagar live when he used to run the truss sections back when he was probably 40, early 40s or something. Unfortunately, we never got to see Sam do that in his 60s, I guess, when we were working with him.
Oh, man.
So, yeah.
Monty.
Yeah. So Bruce is pretty good about going out into the audience. He's taken to like crowd surfing. He'll go out, lay on his back, and in arenas we'll set up a riser maybe about halfway out from the stage to front of house, so like 80 feet or so. So he'll surf out, people pass him out there. Thankfully, he's on wedges, so he only has a microphone to worry about. He's usually good about holding on to it, stuffs it in his pocket if he needs his hands to do something. We played the Apollo Theater a few years ago, and he actually he went up the stairs to the balconies and the mezzanine and would come out on the rails for the spot for the lights. He was hanging off of there, microphone in his pocket, out waving to the crowd, getting all his energy and enthusiasm coming back from them. He's pretty good. I mean, I only have to worry about the microphone, but we do a lot of outdoor stuff. So it's rainy, it's cold. He drops it. We've always got a spare standing by just in case. But I think it was Brad that said, sometimes if they fall, someone in the audience will pick it up and pass it back to the artist. And we've had that happen more than once. So yeah, that's about it. Nothing outrageous.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a short one. Very early in my career, I had a bass player who really just felt the need every night to go into the audience. And it was not an arena. It was, the dirtiest, stinkiest rock clubs across America. And they were just transitioning himself to ears. So he was the only one wearing it. Of course, the only guy goes in the audience. He'd go in. It was fine. They'd throw him back up after a couple minutes of bouncing him around until they decided to start stripping him. We were somewhere in Illinois, somewhere in the Midwest. He jumped out into the audience, got bounced around. Every time he got in view again, he was missing more and more stuff. Shirt, hat, shoes, gone. The pack, ears, everything's gone. We just, they're disposable at this point. But we don't pay.
I got a funny one, Frank, if you're interested. So when I was doing Weird Al, the last tour that I did with him, I get this production sheet, because it's always a big production, like a theatrical type thing. And I get the production sheet and it says, Al will start, somewhere remotely with microphone. It's like, okay, so I emailed him. I said, Al, how are you going to hear yourself? He goes, my in-ears. Like, okay, it doesn't work like that. How are you going to sing? My mic. It's like, doesn't work like that, Al. He's like, what do you mean? So I ended up having to basically put him on a cable, and I made him put fiber to the camera because he was up to 900 feet away. And so basically I'd run an IFB send back and made him wear 2 packs. One was the IFB, and I'd send it back to him. So as he walked in the house, I then had an AB, like the rat switcher thing.
Yeah.
So when he'd walk in the house, I'd switch to the local receiver, and then there was a little bit of a click you'd hear, so I had to time it on the snare hit. Right. So you wouldn't hear it in the audience. But same thing, Jo, with like the audience screaming. He'd walk in the back of the house every time, and you're like, I don't know how to do this. Like, it's just so loud and blazing. It's crazy. Yeah. But it was super funny. I mean, one time we were in Australia, and we kicked him out of he was in a porta potty. That's where he started the show. He like kicks the door open and starts singing the song. We put him in all kinds of weird places. He almost got hit by a car one time outside mid-show. It was a good time. We had fun with that.
Well, your guys seem to be, in general, pretty having a good time, guys. There's nobody out there having a problem. But there are some times where they're in distress on stage, or they want to relay something to you. And there are the hand signals, right? So we're going to play another one of these games. What does this hand sign mean?
Show me that hand.
Right? So, John, you're going to start us off here. I want you to throw out the weirdest hand sign you've ever gotten from an artist and what it meant.
Oh, shit. Oh, man.
Yeah, besides the obviously Italian flavored versions.
All right. I got to stand up for this one, though.
Okay.
If I can.
We're in.
Let's see if my cable will reach. All right. It was, well, you can't really see it. I'm going to blow it. It was that, and then on the ass down. So it was more top end, less bottom end. That was the communication.
Obscene. Monty, what do you got for us?
With Bruce, it's just the normal. He does like an up or down with his finger on the microphone or points at a musician. Steve Van Zandt, though, had one that was like a delay, but it went further, and that was like a chorus delay he wanted on something. Like, okay, well, that's a little bit weird, but sure. Nothing like John's. No body parts like that.
Yeah. Brad?
The weirdest one I ever saw was this. And it had nothing to do with audio whatsoever. It was, I want a hard-boiled egg. That's what it was. And I'm looking at him going like, what does that mean? I have no idea. And then, it turned out he wanted a hard-boiled egg.
Awesome. Matt?
I'd say working with the B-52s, having 3 principals up there, they all 3 have different ideas of what, like, loops and tracks or backing vocals. I get that one a lot. So that was just kind of funny because it's like you just got to decipher between all 3 of them at the same time, kind of. And so it's kind of fun and challenging.
Ricky?
Couple. There's one where my singer would be like, if I have like the reverb muted for whatever reason, if I'm working on something, if he starts singing and he'll go like this.
Fireworks. More fireworks, please.
Give me reverb. So there was that, and then there was another time where a different artist he was on his guitar and he's like standing up and he turns to me, looks directly at me, and he's just like, and to this day I never knew what that meant.
Excellent.
Just like circling his head, just kind of like looking a little frantic. I'm just like, fuck, dude, I don't know what to do here. There was another time too where he like pointed at the guitar amp and I could not make what he was saying. And then after the song, I go up to him, I was like, I'm sorry, but like, what were you trying to say? He's like, Gatorade. Oh.
All right. We're gonna put a twist on this now. I want each of you to throw out a hand sign, and I want to see the other guys try and figure out what it is. Is that cool? You got it? We're gonna start with Brad.
Right. Put me on the spot. This might be an easy one. Just
Everything up.
Swing for the fence.
Really?
everything up.
Everything up all the time.
Yep.
All right, John.
Oh, come back to me.
All right, Monty, you got to throw out a hand sign for these guys to decipher as if you're the artist.
Like mute him.
Shut off your mic. Or,
He's actually not muting an input. It's the front of house talkback. Shut him up.
Tom Morello playing a guitar solo one night. Piano player wanted him off. Come on.
All right. Matt, what do you got?
I'll just
turn you up.
all of you, audience, all you guys. Yeah, nothing exciting.
All right.
All right, John. Have I got everybody but John yet? Who did I not get yet?
Not Ricky.
Ricky.
Put Ricky on the spot.
Let's see where we are now.
Let's see.
Kick up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was an impulse. All right, John, what do you got?
Keys up.
Yeah,
That's the only sign I ever get.
I got this once.
Just a vocal up.
Oh,
Audience.
No.
Click.
Hi-hat.
Oh, hi-hat. All right.
The sled dogs. We had mic'd up sled dogs in another incident. I need the sled dogs up. So, yeah, you would think there were no singers on stage, so it made it really simple to figure out what they were talking about.
So does that circle back as how do you mic sled dogs?
Yeah.
Right, there you go.
Lavaliers
I do the
on
lavalier.
Lavaliers on the harness.
Nice.
The ATV for me was a SM56 up the tailpipe. But, yeah,
Cool.
These have been some funny ones because we've heard stories about having to do all kinds of crazy stuff during the show, and it's kind of a hot seat, right? It is a place of intense concentration for a short period of time, 2 hours, 2.5, however long the show is. You have these mid-show communications with your guy, but has it ever gotten so bad that he's fired something at you, like an object, a microphone, a stand, I don't know, band member? Is there anybody who's ever thrown anything at you, the craziest thing you can remember? And I'm going to start with Ricky.
I mean, the only thing that I could think of at the moment was a guitar player. Pack wasn't working right, but unfortunately, he wears like those cheap, like, airplane earbuds. And he just refuses to go to anything else. So eventually it'll crap out. But he always thinks the first thing is the pack. So we're syncing up a different pack just to, for fail safe. And then he'll like throw the pack. Didn't throw the pack directly at me, but just threw it at stage left. So he just like tossed it. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, nothing ever seems to get tossed at stage right.
No.
I know on Van Halen a few times things went stage right.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I'm saving those for the end of this. Brad, what have you gotten fired at you?
Luckily, I've had nothing thrown at me. I've had like drummers scream at me over talkback mics, and like they don't realize you can't hear them because you cue up their mix and all you hear is them screaming over cymbals and other stuff. And then finally, I'd just go out there and they'd look at me weird, and I'd do one thing like turn their pack up, and it was fine. Like, just totally freaking out about nothing, and then ultimately it was their own problem, and then you fix it.
Yeah, Matt.
I would say, again, I'm pretty fortunate too. Like Brad, I don't think I've had anything thrown at me other than, the rogue RF issues every now and then that might happen. And yeah, if you got an artist on stage, they're in the heat of the moment. So it's panic mode and all hands on deck to get it solved and quick and fixed as possible. But I don't think I've ever had like a drumstick or anything crazy thrown at me. So let's keep it that way.
Monty.
I've had a Takamine come my way.
Oh,
A Takamine
12
guitar.
string. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It wasn't totally meant for me, but the guitar tech was on my side of the stage also. So it kind of came right over monitor world.
Wow.
It was out of tune or something when it went up for a song, and the guitar player wasn't quite happy with it. So yeah, that and the occasional microphone dying out or something, but the guitar was a good one.
Did that guitar survive the toss?
Oh, yeah, it was caught. It didn't hit the ground.
Oh my gosh. John.
all right. The one time Legend fired the whole crew. We had a one-off in Singapore. So we land, we go right to the gig to do a setup the night before, come back, sleep a few hours, come back the next morning, do sound check. We're doing the show. Normally I'm on a profile, but I'm on a PM5D on this show, which I'm familiar enough with. Second to last song, We're Home Free. I put my head down on the desk because I cannot stay awake, and his mic dies.
Oh God.
So in the panic, it just got wet. So I grabbed the spare. As I'm walking around and I wave him in to do the handoff, I realize I haven't turned the spare on yet. So we do the handoff. He grabs the spare. It's still muted. He drops the spare. I unmute it. He grabs the main. That's dead. He ends up going down stage left. He's got both mics. I've got a du jour front of house guy who's got neither of them on. Now I've got both of them on. One, and then all I saw was the main just through the air. Finished the last song, and as you walked off stage, he was sending the email. You're all done.
You're all fired. I'll see you at the airport tomorrow for breakfast.
So the moral of the story was don't mix on a 5D.
Don't mix on 5D.
Although it had nothing to do with it.
I had one incident. Well, I've had a bunch. The client roster that I had was awful. Just a lot of them were troublemakers early on. A lot of rock bands, but I had an artist throw the tripod claw steel stand. Fired it at me, just a straight stand, but it's heavy. you hit the meter bridge of a Harrison SM5 console, which is, old analog console. Awesome. But it took a giant chunk out of it while I was trying to see what was going on because the lighting director was typing his resume on the console. You couldn't see anything. It was just strobe lights and flashing. I looked up in time to see him, Nolan Ryan, a 58 that was taped onto a cable at me to follow the mic stand. It draped over the console. He grabbed a hold of the cable and pulled it like he was starting a mower, shredded the top of the desk, all the knobs just right off the top of it in whatever position they failed in. And away the stage went. All kinds of noises that really shouldn't happen during the performance with people. So I just turned it off and was leaving. I was just leaving. Yeah, I swear to God, I was leaving. And the artist's son tackled me because he thought I was going to beat his dad up. So that was my whole experience with getting something fired at me. But I'm glad it seems like the artists have become a little bit more genteel these days.
I've got a good one, Monty. I think you were doing monitors when we were doing Hagar, and the side fills weren't strapped down.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Or was it Matt? Maybe it was. And it was Rock Candy, and he kicked into Rock Candy. I was out front, and I pushed the rig about another 6 or 8 dB for the encore Rock Candy, and the side fill top went boom, boom, boom on the stage. And but the reason Hagar loved it was because it was right in time with the song. So
did he ask you to do it again the next night?
Yeah, well, no, we strapped him down.
So the other half of this bit, where you work, side stage left, is generally a hangout for everybody who really shouldn't be there. You must have some people that turn into super important people that show up, that either behave or don't. And how do you feel about telling a story about some of these people who show up? You don't have to name names, but is it generally a good thing? Are you okay with being crowded around by people? Does it bother you? And how do you deal with it? John?
No, I enclose myself in. I don't even let my tech in. My tech it's the weirdest thing. I totally isolate myself in. But I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
Back to Legend. About third year, he hasn't married Chrissy yet. They're still dating. John faces me with the piano, and she's all right. So he's playing a song solo, and he's looking at me, but kind of past me, and in between lyrics, making the facial gestures, and I'm like, this goes on for 2 minutes, and I realize his girlfriend is sitting over my left shoulder, and that's when, and he figured out I was, the whole communication thing was going on. He laughed. So she wasn't in my space, but I always thought it was a hysterical story. But yeah, when it comes to people in monitor world, I mean, it just takes 1 second for them to catch your attention. You look away while the singer's looking at you, and that was the end of it.
Oh boy.
Right? I know, right? So yeah, monitor world, no, keep the hell out. Get out. Stay out.
Ricky, you want to weigh in on this one? Seeing as how we have some shared clients here.
We do. Well, yeah, we're all in bunkers for stage left and stage right. So in my world, it's just like 3 people really. No one else is like goes in our side, which is like the farthest down stage left. So yeah, we're pretty, secluded. Like we just keep to ourselves. Everyone's pretty respectful as far as like getting in our, like not going into our world, especially during those times. But there have been other artists that I've worked with where, I don't necessarily mind it when people are around. But the big thing is having like a photographer or something that's just writing your sight line. Like, I'm like, dude, just get the hell out of the way. So I'll sometimes radio like the tour manager is like, hey, can you just let him know? Or sometimes I'll just like try to, shout at him or have someone just like tap him on the shoulder. It's like, hey, can you just like keep this aisle right here clear? So that's about it. Nothing really exciting. I always feel like the stage right is more exciting than stage left.
Was there a reason for that on your particular production?
No, not really. Just I always tend to find that there's more people that are hanging out at stage right. Whereas like, like special guest people or whatever. I always tend, at least from my experience, it always tends to be that way.
And Monty?
I'm pretty inclusive with people being able to watch from my side of the stage. On Bruce, we have so many friends of family that show up to watch that I let them get behind me, but my tech is pretty good about keeping them out of my peripheral vision. You know, they can't creep up inside of the racks. But I mean, when we do festivals, I've got a picture taken from stage right with Bon Jovi, Johnny, you know, someone who was playing the Hard Rock Calling like the night after us had the day off. So they were there, and it was like a who's who behind me in Monitor World. I've had McCartney behind me. Him and his wife were sitting there one night, the night that Bruce got turned off at Hard Rock Calling. So, you know,
You were there for that.
A couple of memorable things for that. Had Prince Harry behind us one night. So my world is kind of like a VIP area, as long as they don't cross the line. And then, you know, I've got one of my little A2s that has to go out and slap some wrists. But, you know, they can't really see much. It's not the best seat in the house, but they feel inclusive and special. So I kind of let them have that. It's fun.
Okay. Brad?
You know, typically I don't mind. I actually mix, oddly enough, stage right on Lumineers. That's where I'm at typically. But ultimately, I don't really mind. This last tour, I was about 100, 200 feet away from the stage anyway, so no one wanted to be near me, which was great. I was all remote. But even when I am around people, I don't care. As long as I've got a clear path, I need to have my exit, which is just upstage in my console, regardless of which side of the stage I'm on. Don't get in my way if I got to go, and make sure I got about 3 feet behind my console. Otherwise, I don't really care. Speaking of like having a who's who, I remember when I did Ringo in LA last year. I mean, massive amounts of people. I think Joe Walsh was standing behind me, like had his foot on my cue wedge and everything. It was just kind of funny. I'd never been in a situation quite like that. It was entertaining.
Matt, you got anybody breaking into the zone?
I'm like Brad, stage right's better. With Frampton, I set up stage right also. Same thing. I'm okay with having people around. Most artists I work for don't have a ton of people on stage, except for some of those Ringo shows, and you get the who's who come out and want to hang around. But as long as I've got that clear path to the main artist and I can always have eye contact with them, I'm okay having people around. But yeah, I get really annoyed when somebody gets in my way or I have somebody blocking my access. So if something needs to happen, I can always run around the right side of my console because I need to get there. But I'm cool with having people around. Not a lot usually.
I got to share the best one-liner I've ever heard. When I was hanging boxes for JK on Bruce, and Frank back then, well, I guess you guys still do it, Monty's stage left, and Troy Milner was mixing stage right. And you always get these punters. Monty would hang at the desk all evening after sound check till show. And these punters would show up, and this guy shows up with his girlfriend, and he's trying to impress her by showing her what everything does. The only thing the guy can't figure out is why there's 2 monitor consoles. And Monty, deadpan, looks at him. He asked Monty, why are there 2 monitor boards? He says, simple. Everyone's in stereo. I mix the left ear, and my guy over there mixes the right ear.
I don't remember that, but that was a good
the
one.
greatest one-liner of all time. Fucking amazing.
I'm sure that, yeah. If you don't know, you don't know. I mean, if I walked into a Formula One garage, I couldn't tell you one part from the other. Yeah, you could definitely have some fun.
Well, this dude was just like swinging it, and Monty just went, "Yeah, you're done. Get out of here. You know nothing."
My older funny thing was, do you remember the white EQs, the 31 band white systems? They had the variable sensitivity knob on the front of them. Just keep going left, and the minute you blow on the thing, it just turns red like it's clipping. So you could, if you're supposed to set it for like what's on the other side of the EQ, like, oh, if I'm clipping here, I'm gonna clip that thing. But it's, you can have big fun, just spin them all to backwards, and they never came out of red. They're not distorting, you can't hear it, but it looks horrific. People panicking.
Paul Dalen, I don't know if you know Paul Dalen. When I was young, he was mixing front of house for Sanborn. He put a pair of graphics unplugged in the back of his rack facing the audience that basically had a sign that said, help yourself.
Help yourself. Wait, has anybody had the tip jar out? Anybody bothered with that?
more of a front of house thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sounds like it.
I think in front of house, it needs like a suggestion box.
I had a suggestion box.
Oh my god. Have any of you ever experienced a meltdown because of a guest, the inevitable drink goes in the console or some other foolishness like that? No. So it looks like there's a reason why you guys have done this for so long. You've managed to keep everybody from messing your groove up while it's going on. Well, that's really good. It's an amazing thing we managed to do. We get to travel around the world and do a lot of things that a lot of people don't get to do. We're the cool kids in class. Even though I'm not a monitor guy anymore, I get it. I can't express how thankful we are for having you guys around for the last little bit to hear a little bit about what it is you actually do and get people to think about, like all of us sitting for a little bit, Is there any part of the world that you guys like more than anywhere else doing shows in? Is there some place that you really love going to?
Japan.
I like South Africa a lot, like Cape Town. I mean, Japan's awesome too, but I really enjoyed South Africa the times we've gone there. The crowds have always been really good, and just always just thankful to have people down there, bands down there, everything.
I miss Europe this time of the year. Scandinavia, Northern Germany, when it's just, you go to 11:30 at night and have a couple of beers and it's just gorgeous out. I kind of miss that. Other than the gigging bit, that's about.
Ricky?
For me, I was fortunate enough to, when I was working with Ben Harper, that we got to play some really cool spots. And Europe was definitely like a praise. The audience there, the fans there, just they treat him with gold over there. So parts of France were amazing. I remember the old Coliseum in Nimes. I've always think about that place. It's always a fantastic venue. Just the aesthetic of it. And we've gone to some really exotic and like very places that like I never thought that I would ever even think about going. One time we went to like Fez, Morocco, so that was an interesting time for me, and I was still pretty early on in my career. So yeah, it's been a great time, being in this industry.
As far as traveling, having a special place, is there an event that you've done, a specific thing that you hold to yourself as like, I did this, it's a special moment, whether it was because you were in some location or whether it was just something special to you? Anybody can weigh in on this. I mean, Monty, you have anything specific?
I don't know. I've been involved with a lot of really memorable moments.
Yeah, but now we're asking you to narrow it down. You're on the hot
I know
seat.
it's so tough.
Yeah.
I did Woodstock in '94, and that was fantastic when they, the first time they came back and did a Woodstock. I remember running out on stage when 9 Inch Nails was playing and Reznor had thrown a mic stand and it cut the power to the keyboard riser. Most of my memories of fantastic things like that are failures. South Africa, we were in the middle of a rainstorm and the rain came right into the quad box on my RF rack. Memorable things there. But then there's the awesome times like playing the festivals in Europe and the 100,000 people just singing along to every song that the guy plays, So I can't narrow it down to one thing. There's so many cool things in this job.
Ricky, anything specific?
I'm thinking about a moment where I was with the band Young the Giant, where we had done a gig in Vancouver and we had to fly to San Francisco for Outside Lands. So that was my first Outside Lands experience with those guys. And we were like, our flight was like 3 hours late, like a delay. So we missed load in, we missed sound check, we missed everything. So by the time we actually did get to the airport in San Francisco, our tour manager ended up had organized with the festival a police escort. and just like we gunned it all the way down to Golden Gate Park. And so we get there, we set up, literally, you know, we hit the stage as we were pretty much still pinning certain things. And it turned out to be one of the best shows, most memorable shows ever. So to kind of feel like that was something that we accomplished, and we pulled it off with all odds against us was pretty awesome. It was great. So yeah.
Nice. John?
I've got three that come to mind. One was in 2004, I got to go to Iraq when things were heating up with Puddle of Mud, and we did a show for the first ID over there, which was amazing. 3,000 soldiers. Another was during sound check. I got to do the White House at a state dinner with John, and stood with the First Lady, the real First Lady, Michelle Obama, and stand with her at the money seat while he sound checked and got her input on how it sounded. But here's the best one that happened last year, and you talk about the gear we use and everything. This was the opposite. This was a bar with an Allen and Heath console, with a couple old wedges, a couple single 15 with a horn, one box flown per side, 58 that's got, you had to hammer out the friggin' windscreen and get rid of the rust. You know what I mean? 4 mics and a piano. But it was in Dayton, Ohio. It was a week after the mass shootings in the street. And to get things back in order, John went down there because he grew up an hour from there, and went into the bar for the families and the friends and the people who worked there, and did a 45-minute set acoustic on piano. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. And it was one of those, you get those opportunities where you actually change people's lives. You actually make a difference in people's lives just by putting on a concert and taking them away from reality for a little bit and doing that. That was hands down the number one show I've ever done. But I think what's awesome about what we do is we get those moments like Monty was talking about, where you happen to be, I call them CNN moments. You happen to be in a part of the world where everyone's focusing on that part of the world at that time. And you just happen to be there, whether it's, the Berlin Wall coming down, I'm aging myself, or the Olympics or what have you. And you find yourself in situations where there's no other way to explain how we get to be in places, meet people, see parts of the world, different times of the year, it's really been the benefit of it. So, but my number one gig of all time was on the crappiest gear, and it sounded phenomenal. And it was that X factor, it was just that X factor of that vibe.
Brad, you got something for us?
Yeah, I got a few. We did one in Vicenza, actually. It was a USO gig, and that was just, it was a 45-minute set in a base. It was like in a gymnasium, but the crew was amazing because it was all the soldier guys. They were just so appreciative, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
Another one we did was where we were in Tokyo, and then we were supposed to fly from Tokyo to Shanghai, and they got 6 inches of snow in Tokyo, which just shut the city down. So they were able to get the band and 2 techs, me and the guitar tech, to go over. So I ended up actually mixing front of house for the band at this club in Shanghai, because the monitor guy, I just gave him my file and said, here you go. And at front of house, I had a file, but then they handed us an M7. So instead of just like making it all up for the guy, I just went and mixed it, which was fun. And then another one I did was actually, we did a White House show too, John, which was super fun. South by South Lawn, which was really cool. Met Obama and everybody, was just amazing. But then the last one I think was probably the coolest one of all, which wasn't with Lumineers at all. But I used to work on the Oprah show. And so we did her big, not the series finale, but it was like the big extravaganza thing they did right near the end of this whole series. And so we had a rehearsal. I had Ian Kuhn out there. He was mixing monitors for like the orchestra and everything like that. And I would do the guests coming in. But so I was helping Ian for the rehearsals for the orchestra. And one of the guests was Aretha Franklin. So she walked in the door and everyone just like hushed. It was quiet as anything. And so I moved the mic because she sat down at the piano, which nobody expected. And so I put the mic up and just like really quickly moved the wedge over so it was in front of her. And she sat down and played Amazing Grace and sang it by herself. There were people in the choir were crying, and it was just amazing. And I was 3 feet from her while she did this whole thing, and nobody expected it. Like I said, it's that whole X factor, like the weird thing, like nobody, there were 80 people there, and those are the only 80 people that ever saw that. It's just, I think it was really cool. It was fun. I looked back on that whole show with really cool thoughts. It was neat.
Cool. Matt?
I think it's just the sheer fact that we love what we do. We get to work with amazing artists. We get paid. We get to travel the world. I mean, I think it all just encompasses together of like our whole career of what we do, and we appreciate it. I don't have any like super amazing shows like all these other guys, but there's just so many little ones that you add them all up together. It's the whole experience of life that we're living, and I love it. It's such an awesome business we're in. I appreciate every bit of it.
It is truly a lot of hard work, and it's really appreciated. Hopefully we're all going to be back to work soon, right? I would really like to thank you guys for joining us this week. John Ostrin, Monte Carlo, Brad Galvin, Matt Fitzgerald, and Ricky Leon. You're watching Live from Nowhere. We're raising awareness and funds for the people in the entertainment industry that are currently out of work, and we really do appreciate your time, guys. Go to the website, find the links. You're not alone. Talk to anybody anytime, all right? Guys, anything else? Anybody got a last minute zinger they want to throw at me?
Just thanks for having us, and just a shout out to Stewart Berk for, having me on for this. This is, it was fun talking to everybody here.
It's good to see some familiar faces in a time like this, and we don't get to see friends traveling either right now. So it's good. Good to see everyone.
I honestly have all day long. I could sit here and nerd audio. I could do that all day. I know, John, you've got to get going. You've got to.
No, I'm all right. I'm all right.
I actually think I tipped a console for you when you were coming through Pittsburgh a couple years ago at the amphitheater.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. For those days to show up again, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
How's everybody else? You doing well? Everybody hanging in, waiting for the inevitable. Either we start or don't start.
I hate to say it. I've worked 7 days in a row this week because his album drops today. So we're doing all these like filming things, right?
Good.
And it's, I honestly, I didn't think I was going to get back on a console. I got back on the desk about a month ago for a gig, and, a few people are doing things. So, I mean, I really feel for the guys that are taking the hard hit, and, but I was back on the desk, and within 2 hours, I'm like, all right, I'm over it. I'm ready to go back into lockdown.
Did it feel weird for you, going back behind the desk after being shut down for so long?
What was interesting was I threw my file up, got on his mic, was talking, and I'm like, well, this sounds like shit. What? Like, and then you got to loosen your ears a bit, get back into it a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that, the fatigue that you no longer have. I remember my last couple of years of wearing ear molds for really loud, obnoxious stuff. Like there was no quality to anything I did as a monitor mixer with ears. I was a wedge and side fill guy. The desks didn't do enough for me.
Right.
And having all the outboard gear is not an option, right? So I was not real good at it, just console to transmitter to ears. But I can't imagine that it won't be any different after 5, 8, 10 weeks off, that you're going to show up to something and go, oh my God, that thing sounds like I'm looking at a light bulb. Just for the love of God, turn it down.
It seems like every year when you like start a new tour cycle and you work off last year's file, it's always like, oh, you got to update this. You're like, wow, how did I end the year like this? So it's going to be that, I think, extrapolated even more, because it's not only us starting a new cycle, but it's everybody sitting at home, all the musicians not even being on a stage. I think there's going to be a lot of change, and it'll be good change.
Yeah, there is another question I wanted to ask. It kind of got off of it. Like, I just forgot the approach. Like, in all cases, you work with artists that are known to other artists, people that are respected, that they want to collaborate with. They want to do songs together. They write together. They perform together, right? Do you find yourself in the instance of, suppose you're going to an award show and Bruce is singing with such and such, or Sammy's singing with this guy, or your guy is going to sing out of his typical element? Do you dovetail into the other monitor engineer's position so much to help along to kind of, look, this is the salt, pepper, and garlic this guy wants on his steak? Can you do that for him in your show?
I might just offer like some hints on like how he wants his vocal to sound, or if this was a song, he'd want some slap or reverb on it. But if my guy's stepping into somebody else's stage, I'll just kind of stand back and be that. If Bruce has a question, I could liaise, but I'm not going to jump in and twiddle knobs.
Yeah, I would second that. Like with Peter, he likes his sound pretty specific. So I know what he's looking for. So when we sit in with other artists, I'll talk to the monitor guy and talk to him and let him know what Peter's looking for. But I don't want to step on his console either. I want him to be in control, but it's, hey, this is what Peter's looking for and this is what he's going to need. So I'll give him some input. But again, I wouldn't want somebody coming up to me and taking over my console and vice versa scenario too. So it's kind of that balance of you want to help out a little bit, but not overtake their job also. It's kind of what I look in.
Yeah. I agree. Like, I mean, I've been in that situation where, I've just, say, hey, I'm just here to help. Like this, my artist just likes to have a little bit of this and that. And if anything, like I'll just be my eyes are going to be on him. I mean, the artist, like just saying, hey, if he needs anything, he'll wave at me and I'll just tap on our engineer's shoulder saying, hey, like he just needs something, for his mix. I've had other situations before where too, like, I was driving the whole thing, and we've had guest singers come in and, jump in on a few songs. And so their monitor engineer would come in and, kind of like overcrowded me and, in some ways, and like, even though like his section was there, it was still like reaching over and like starting to grab knobs and this and that. I'm just kind of like, you know what? Here's the iPad. Go over there.
You couldn't do that with an XL4.
No.
I'm walking into one today. I'm leaving in about a half hour to do. John and Alicia are going to battle live on Instagram at 5:00. So they're going to set up, they've got pianos set up back to back. And they're basically going to do a 45-minute live battle for charity. So I popped over yesterday. And of course, the way they've got the control room set up, they're like, well, we've got a mix of music to send to John and Alicia. I'm like, so both pianos and iPods all in one stereo bus? He goes, yeah. I'm like, oh, that won't work. Well, why? What if John wants more piano? What if, you got to split this stuff up? So I'm walking into something I don't really want to deal with this afternoon. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I mean, like you said, though, you got to protect the paycheck. You got to protect your artist. You know what I mean? Like, if you see the train coming, most of the job is damage control, like,
well, in that instance, when you're going to do, collaboration.
Yeah.
Brad,
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar to what everybody else said. Pretty much I'll go there, but my guys, they look directly at me. Even if there's another monitor engineer I'm standing there, they're going to look at me. They're not going to look at the other guy anyway.
Right.
So I've done the TV thing, so I'm used to kind of that whole liaising between people and all that kind of stuff and just knowing how to kind of interact with guys. So once I talk to them, they're really cool with me. I'll just say, look, he's going to want a lot of reverb on his voice, a couple things, just the normal stuff that we would all say, at least get him to a starting point, and then I'll grab the mic and talk to him. As far as people coming onto our stage and working with us, I've got 2 guest mixes built into the console already. They're basically just a full mix. And it's pre-fade for the guest mics and inputs. So I'll just hand them a pack and go, here you go, mid-show, like in between songs. If you want changes, let me know. So the guy can sit there the whole show and like tell me, make me changes the entire way. And I'll do it in between songs up until they actually go on the stage.
Oh,
that's worked out really well.
The guest engineer is rebuilding the mix. You're rebuilding.
I can hand him a pack. Yeah. I'll like hand him a pack and go, here you go. It's all pre-fade. Like it's post-fade from the inputs, but it's pre-fade on their mic. So they can talk into the microphone and no one on stage is going to hear it, but they'll hear it in their ears and stuff. Makes it a lot easier for me.
No, I'm going to say this is great. Like I said, I could go on for days with this and we could go into the technical stuff, but it's been a lot of fun.
Glad it finally worked out.
That was great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you guys. Thanks for your patience.
Great seeing you guys. Take care.
Take care.
Guys, be safe.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.